Hey guys, I'm super excited to have you join this episode of the Ripple Effect podcast because I've got a special guest. Dr. Froswa Booker-Drew is joining me. I met Froswa a few years back. I was doing a 8-minute ripple for the Austin Community College Center for Nonprofit. And Froswa came onto our Zoom call, I'd say a couple years back. It seems like it's been years, but it was really last year during the pandemic. She came onto this call and she just had one of those infectious smiles, right? Her personality just lit up the Zoom screen and wanted to get to know her a little better, reached out to her. Her and I had some great conversations, found we had a lot in common. I went on her podcast. She's now coming on mine, and I'm super excited to have her join the Ripple Effect podcast. Dr. Froswa Booker is a Ph.D., is a network weaver who believes in relationships that are key to our personal, professional, and organizational growth. She's been quoted and featured in Forbes, Aussie, Bustle, Huffington Post, Modern Luxury, and other media outlets due to an extensive background in leadership, nonprofit management, philanthropy, partnership development, training, and education. She's currently Vice President of Community Affairs for the State Fair of Texas, responsible for grant making, educational programming, and community initiatives. She is also the co-founder of Heritage Giving Circle, one of the first Black women giving circles in the state of Texas, founder of Power in Action Dallas, and the owner of Soulstice Consultancy. Almost said that incorrectly. Soulstice Consultancy, providing training and consultations for nonprofits and small business. She is also an author of the book, It's Time to Fly Away, a mother's loving legacy of life lessons, releasing daughters into womanhood, available at Amazon.com and at her website, drfroswa.com. I am so excited to have her join us today and be a part of this. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I know it's going to be a great one. So help me welcome Dr. Froswa to the Ripple Effect podcast. So I have a confession to make. I was so excited about this conversation that I forgot to actually hit resume on the record. So, but that last soundbite was perfect, but I missed the rum cake. We have to go back and cover that. But for our audience, I asked the question, how did Froswa become Froswa, right? What's the origin story? And she was giving this great detail, and I was so into this because I'm so excited and thrilled that you're here today that I literally forgot to hit resume record. So
we'll do it again.
Let's do it again. Yeah. We'll go back through that process just really quickly. I'm really anxious to know. I'm all about the origin story and sort of how you got into all these things that you're in. And so I described it in your introduction I don't even know when you sleep because you are so in demand and busy, right? But tell us a little bit about that childhood one more time and just a little bit how you got into philanthropy.
It ended up watching my family and my parents. I joked with you earlier about my mom would take these fruit baskets and fruit cakes, which, in retrospect, I now go, yeah, they were filled with rum. I know why people were always so happy to see her come with those cakes. I hate them now. But people were like, I'm sick. And mom would be there with the fruitcake to, talk to them. And she would give people cards. And I saw my dad feeding people. My parents had a restaurant when I was really young. So I saw entrepreneurship and I saw my dad hustle. So that also influenced me. But my grandmother was a part of this group at church called Willing Workers that did mission work. So all of those experiences shaped me into being who I am. And, it led through college with my involvement at UTA on campus. And I was joking with you about when I was thinking I wanted to be, a doctor and a medical doctor, and then realized I was so piss poor in math. And I could do biology and figure out what worked. But trying to do that on probably another human being would have been, a malpractice suit. So that was good. That didn't work out either. And then I was working on a paper for a conference at UT Austin's library. And I go in and all these law students are there and they looked miserable. And one of them came up to me and said, if you do this, this is what your life is going to be like. And I was thinking, like, hell, I'm going to look like that. And I don't want to be miserable. And I don't think I really want the student loan debt that you
No,
all seem to
no,
accumulate
yeah.
from law school and have to work, a gazillion hours. So thank you, sir, for impressing that upon me. And I decided, no, that wasn't it. And so I just ended up being in spaces that gave me opportunities, whether it was in education or social services, that I had the opportunity to kind of grow and learn in a way that young people today don't really have. They're so, I've got to do this by the time I'm this. And I had that too to some degree, but I was telling a young lady the other day that I didn't have this planned trajectory of I've got to do this and these things. I just kind of allowed opportunities to come and took those things that would allow me to grow. And
Hmm.
so I took kind of the scenic route of the nonprofit help people world and just got in a whole lot of different, places and positions that really gave me this amazing foundation to do what I do now. So the long story of it all is I'm here. It just kind of happened.
Well, we're so grateful you are, because you are just an amazing,
Thank you.
inspirational person that I encourage everybody to to learn about your book and the work that you're doing, because you are giving
Thank
back to the
you.
community in so many different ways. And on top of that, you work a full-time job for the State Fair of Texas, right? You run the whole thing, like you're
Yes.
basically running the whole thing.
I am not, please do not tell my boss that. I am so not running the State Fair of Texas. Mitchell Gleber runs the State Fair of Texas. I tell people I make corn dogs on Tuesdays and Thursdays and funnel cakes on Friday. And so they allow me to have some time off. And people look and they believe it. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I really do that. No, I really have. I have the most amazing job at the fair. I run our community affairs work. And
Yep.
when I started, we were in a bad position. I mean, we were getting reported on by D Magazine and Dallas
Oh.
Morning News. And I remember 3 weeks in, I called my mom and I was like, oh my God, what the hell did I say yes to? Oh, please help me. I don't know what to do. And it was a time when the park was leaving from the city of Dallas to becoming a public private partnership that has happened, and it's amazing things going on. But
Yep.
at that time, a lot of the history of the fair was coming up, and several friends of mine were like, why are you doing this? And I'm a firm believer that if you want change, it's good to have folks on the outside
Yep.
that are keeping people accountable, but you also have to have people on the inside that can speak into what change looks like and inform that. And so I was given the opportunity to walk into this space and really develop our community affairs work. And I love that I've been able to have the support from my boss and my colleagues there and our board to really come in and do some innovative things. I'm so proud of the fact that, we're changing this narrative around philanthropy, that 90% of the folks that we fund are organizations led by people of color. And that's not typically the
Yeah.
case in philanthropy.
Yep.
So, really trying to make sure that the neighborhood around us is getting supported, whether it's capacity building for nonprofits or economic development, or if it's education. We just don't write checks, even though I'm happy we get to do that. We did over 500,000 last year, but we actually create programs and work alongside of these nonprofits to help them. So I'm happy that they gave me the opportunity to come in and I get to play.
And you obviously don't enjoy it at all. I can tell just by your expression. It's like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
just a job.
you know what though? I am very blessed and I don't take that for granted. There are people who get up every single day and they hate what they do.
Yep. Yep.
And what a life to lead where you spend so much of your time at work. Some of us spend more time at work than we do at home.
Yeah.
And I am so blessed to be at a place where I really get to do what I love to do. But I recognize that I had to go through a journey to get there. And I think for young people, we give them, and we do a disservice to them by having them believe it's all going to happen when you want it to, and it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a process that you have to develop not only skills, but there's a temperament that sometimes has to come with where we end up landing. And had I done this 25 years ago, I was so immature, super sensitive. And so anytime someone would have said something, I would have taken it personally. And I see now that all the things that have happened in my life have not been wasted and have been used for such a time as this. So
What
it's a
so
gift that I get to do it. Go
that's
on.
a I mean I love that perspective, and it's a beautiful one. What was the tipping point there to have you start to sort of take control of that power back for yourself, and not take it so personal, and realize that you had to be your own advocate, your own champion? Because you are definitely the poster child for that, without question, in everything that you do. I just, from your branding to, the approach that you take, and in the work that you do outside of the state fair, and even in your writing, I just think that you are a shining example that people can really benefit and
Thank
learn from.
you. It's the question I asked my daughter, who is about to turn 21. How's that working for you? I always ask her that. And when I couldn't answer that it was working, I knew I had to do something different.
Yeah.
And for me, it was recognizing that there is so much stress that we sometimes take on that has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
There is this leadership book, and I use it all the time. It's called The Artistry of Leadership. And they talk about that there are these four frames that exist in human relations. And they talk about, or within organizations. And one is the symbolic, where it's this water cooler conversation. It's the culture of how things have been done. But then there's this other piece that's around policies and procedures that, they're just rules to doing things. And then they talk about this other lens that is the human relations. And that's the one I lived in for a long
Hmm.
time, where it was the emotions and how things made me feel. And what I had to come to realize is that quite often there are other things that are at work. The other lens they talk about is power. That, there is always going to be a power dynamic where you work, whether
Yep.
it's you and your boss or something with a colleague. And I was over personalizing things that were working in other frames. And
Hmm.
once I figured out that, oh my goodness, there are all these other variables at work that have nothing to do with me,
Yeah.
then it made it easy to take myself out of those situations. And it's not to say that things don't bother you, and you're not, you're human, you get frustrated. But
Yeah.
I think you have to be able to apply the right lens to a situation so that you're not constantly being offended, and recognizing you're not the center of the universe anyway. We want to be, but we're not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the earlier you can learn that, the better, right? Yeah, the better served you will be, for
Yes.
sure. And
Yes.
I think that shines through in your sort of your service mindset, the giving back. And talk a little bit about the nonprofit that you are a co-founder of, because I'm just in love with this. In fact, actually, your ears were probably burning last week because I was talking to Rebecca Powers, who was just a guest on the podcast, and
She's
her
so
book
awesome.
her book just landed yesterday. Trust Your Cape came out, but she was like, that was the ultimate ripple to connect with you. She just loved you. But tell our
She's
audience a little bit about your
awesome.
nonprofit, and what you're doing with it.
So there's two ladies, Akila Wallace and another dear friend as well, Dr. Halima Leek Francis, who we started this giving circle. And it was to just come together and pull our resources to help within our community. We noticed that a lot of organizations that were being led by Black women were not getting funding. And actually, in this country, 0.6% of all funding goes to organizations led by Black women.
Wow.
So you have a significant group of people who have proximity, who have lived experience, who are not getting the opportunity to
Yeah.
be able to sustain the work that they do. And so we wanted to be able to do that because we saw in the spaces that we were all in nonprofits in different ways, that those folks weren't at the table. So we pulled our money together in the first year. We did about $30,000, and it was just other
That's
women
awesome.
coming along going, "Hey, we want to do it." And keep in mind, we're not talking big money. Most of our women are paying 500, and then those who vote pay 1,000. So this isn't like, enormous where people are
Yeah.
writing checks for 20, 30,000. But it taught me that we tend to give philanthropy this power to people that have all this resource, not
Yeah.
recognizing that all of us in some way can be philanthropists. And so this past year, we were able to raise 56,000, and
Wow.
and so yeah, and so it's been 3 years of doing. The year before we went a little under, and we did like, I think, 27. And so we've raised over $100,000 of our money in 3 years to grant out to organizations. We don't take a salary. I get nothing out of it. It's just a job that I get a chance to do when I'm, hopefully after I've rested. It's something that doesn't happen much, but it's something that I am so, elated that I get an opportunity to do this. And it's, again, changing this narrative about what philanthropy looks like and who can be philanthropists. It is so cool to see all these giving circles pop up. There's a group actually called Philanthropy Together that has been doing these conferences around the country, and they've been virtual, but helping people start giving circles. So this is a thing, anybody can do it. We're not, special to do that, but I hope your listeners recognize that they too can pool their resources and make a difference. It doesn't require a lot.
No, but it does make a big difference, doesn't it?
It does. It has allowed these nonprofits during COVID to be able to do the work that they needed to do. We saw diaper distributions go out of control. And that's one of the things I had to recognize, even my own privilege in that. My kid is an adult, so I don't think about diapers and things. I'm so glad it's over, but I know somebody needs that.
Yeah.
In Dallas, there was one of our nonprofits that traffic was backed up on like two or three freeways when COVID first happened, because poor women did not have access and women with resource couldn't find them.
Wow.
So they were having to figure out where they could go and get diapers and wipes for their babies. And for us to be able to fund nonprofits, the one who was doing it here was called I Look Like Love. But to fund nonprofits like that, or Carter's House that was providing clothing, that is so amazing, because those are the nonprofits we don't typically hear about.
Right.
But they're grassroots on the ground. But she was giving out thousands of diapers for families who just could not find them. Because you remember the toilet paper
Oh
thing,
yeah. Yeah.
was, and I didn't equate that to diapers. That too was an issue for families.
Yep. Yep. Wow, that's amazing. That is really amazing. Well, so the organization is, give
It's
a
called
plug and how people
Heritage.
can find. Yep.
It's called, yeah, they're going to kill me for not doing that. It's called Heritage Giving Circle. And so you can go to heritagegivingcircle.org and you can find it online. We're under Heritage Giving Circle. We're under Heritage Giving Fund. So you will be able to find us under any of those. But we're doing, and we do it differently. We're not just doing money either. We do workshops to help any nonprofit. We have our members teach, because most of them are in nonprofit management too. So we just did a workshop on how to, get money. It was called Show Me the Money. We have, which people wanted to come to that one,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is so cool. But we also had a panel of funders. So we're trying to find ways to give back beyond the check, but it's using our time, our treasure, and our talent
Yep.
to be able to make impact. And that's important, because you can give beyond just your money. There's so many ways that we can impact our communities.
Yep, absolutely. I think to a certain degree for the nonprofit space in general, right? When you can extend it beyond writing the check and you can actually participate in where those funds go, you have a truer appreciation of the impact you're actually making, right? And that
Yes.
ultimately is I think the big switch for a lot of people, in that they realize, I can give more, I can do more, and it doesn't just have to be the funds, because a lot of people maybe don't have those extra funds, especially now with COVID, the situation with COVID. People were coming out of it, but there are a lot of people that are still recovering from it. But those time, your time and your talent, those things are needed right now in the nonprofit space.
And I'll tell you what else is needed, which is what you do. It's the relationships. I don't think we recognize the power of our networks,
Yeah.
because what happens when you go to a nonprofit and then you bring your friends, and they're not just writing checks, but your friends are now serving on the board.
Yeah.
Your friends are now using their skills to be able to help, whether it's an attorney who comes in and advises them and says that contract is messed up, you don't want to sign that.
Yeah.
Or you have someone who comes in and can do accounting, the stuff in envelopes. I mean, there's so many things that you can do beyond just the traditional volunteer to being a skill-based volunteer. I don't think we recognize the power of our networks.
Yep.
We don't even have to do it. We can just open the door to our relationships, and that can be the most critical thing that can totally change the trajectory of a nonprofit.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, well said, and a great reminder. The person that originally brought us together, well, was Kate, who runs everything for Austin Community College Center for Nonprofit. Let's be honest, but Barry Silverberg likes to
Don't
take
tell
the
Barry
credit.
that. Do not tell Barry that. You're going to get me in trouble for listening to you say that. Oh my God. Barry,
Oh,
I didn't do it. I didn't
his
say
radar is
it.
going off right now. I guarantee you, totally going off right now.
He's going to be calling.
Yeah. Just a second. The Barry Silverberg tracker app is activated. I guarantee you. How did you come in contact with him? How did you originally contact with him?
Oh my God. I have known Barry for decades. Barry has been a mentor, and I remember I met him and I was starting to do consult in the nonprofit space. And when you go talk to Barry, you don't know when he's joking or when he's serious. So you're sitting there going, you're trying to figure out, should I laugh?
Yeah.
Is that, and he's so calm about it. And then he starts laughing and you're like, oh, okay, it's okay to laugh. And then I got to a place where it's like, okay, we're going to just be crazy together.
Yep.
And I'm just going to let you be crazy, and you're going to have to experience my craziness. And together we're going to not only, change the world, but we're going to also make some other people crazy.
Yep.
And he is just an amazing person. He opened up so many doors for me, but he taught me a lot around, nonprofit management and even relationship building. Barry is one of the smartest folks I know.
He is.
And he is one of the most generous people with his time. But when you first meet him, you're kind of going, does he like me? I don't know. Is that a joke?
Yeah.
And once I got to know him, it's just like he is a dear friend and mentor, and someone that I will always be grateful to, because he didn't have to give me the opportunities that he made available to me. He's just great.
Well, I mean, he's kind of an example of the ripple, because he recognizes what I do in sort of the community we've been able to create around the local Austin nonprofit community, and he's given me a stage to present my ripple concepts to them. And so we were doing that 8-minute ripple where you first came to that event. But the funny thing is, and it's to hear you say it, there are two things that are imitations of Barry: a pen coming out of his pocket, and he's going to write a card. And then you telling Barry, giving Barry a compliment and saying, Barry, you're brilliant. Well, yeah, of course. I know.
I know, right? Doesn't he do that?
He does.
And he has that little voice.
Yeah.
And he does that little voice that's just really quiet.
Yeah.
And then he'll say something that's hysterical. And you're just like, where did that come from?
Yeah, he's so deadpanned about it, right? Like, you missed his calling as a comedian. I told people recently that he I've known him for 15 years. He still calls me Bill. Mainly because...
And why does that not surprise me?
Yeah, well, I said, you do know my name's Steve. He's like, yeah, I do. I just think you look like a Bill. That's what you are.
That is him.
And he's the most giving guy. But the second thing that was funny with him was when I told him after our event, I said, hey, tell me about Froswa, because I am impressed. You and I connected just very briefly on that event. Then we got the call, and I happened to mention that you and I don't know what we're going to cook up. We're going to cook up something. And he goes, yes. Oh, God. He said, I don't want any part of that. That's trouble. That's trouble. And but in all
good trouble.
Yeah, it's good
trouble.
In all seriousness, he has so many positive things to say about you, and he's just such a huge fan of yours. And he just said there was no doubt that you and I just had a natural connection. It didn't surprise him in any way, shape, or form. And of course, he'll take credit for our friendship. So,
well, he will. But I was not coming that night.
I know.
I was kind of like, I don't know about this. I'm real picky about workshops and where I spend my time. And I was like, I don't know about this, but I'm going to do it. I want to see what this is. And when I got on, and your personality is amazing in itself.
Thank you.
But I'm being honest, because some people do relational stuff.
Uh-huh.
And they're not relational people. And you're kind of going, did I miss something? It's so you. And then to go through those exercises and spend time with people that I did not know and
Yeah.
immediately connect to, because the way the exercises are designed, it allows you the space to be vulnerable
Yep.
that typically you would not do with a complete stranger. And that not only fascinated me, I was so impressed by it. And then the folks that I got connected to, we're still in contact with each other. So
That is
Sean, I'm
awesome.
pulling him to do some stuff in Dallas,
Oh,
and
perfect.
introduced him to some people. And so folks have, since then had friended me on Facebook, and we keep in touch. But it's amazing how in that short amount of time you create the space for people to be comfortable and they can be authentic, and you can really have some transformative relationships.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal, and I appreciate those kind words. That's always my hope. I know the process can be a bit interesting for some people that come into it like, what am I expecting to do? And then you walk away learning more about yourself than you even learned about other people, right? Because it's amazing
Yes.
when we let down our guard and we take away the trappings of titles and status, and we just allow people to have this conversation, and it's a fun question that generally kicks it off, but that you learn something about the other person by what they share in their story. But then you learn when you share your own version of that story, or your take on the question. It's pretty amazing how people are like, I've never even thought of it in that way or this approach. And so it was really good. And I just knew that night, you just lit up the Zoom screen because you showed up and like, I'm here. This could start.
I was,
It was
no, but I love the space you created, and it says to me, though, Steve, that I think that what we're missing in our society is opportunities to be proximate to people
Yep.
and have spaces to just have conversation. I
Yep.
think we walk in so often wanting to be right. And I
Yep.
think we walk in with already these kind of preloaded questions, answers rather.
Yeah.
And we're so ready to respond that what you create is the space for people not to know what they're going to respond to.
Yeah.
They don't know the questions ahead of time, so they can't predict what's going to happen. So it allows people to let their guard down, because I don't know, and everyone with me doesn't know what's going to happen. So I don't feel like someone has the upper hand. And
Yep.
I think we need to figure out, how do we create more spaces for people to come together? Because even despite the differences that people have, we have a lot more in common
Yep.
then and it's not to diminish the differences. The differences are amazing. We need that. Who wants to live in a world with everybody that's just like them? I know I don't want to be in a world with a bunch of Francois. God, we would never sleep, because we would go, you could do that, let's go and do that. It would be insane. So why would I want to be around a bunch of me's? I think that there is such an opportunity within those spaces to experience the diversity of thought and ethnicity and gender and
Yep.
everything else that makes us different. We need to create more of those spaces for
Yep.
people to just show up and be the authentic self.
Well, yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it's those opportunities that lead to deeper, more meaningful conversations and even stronger
Yes.
connection, right? So I am truly
Yes.
blessed to know you. I am so grateful that we've become friends. And I
Me
just think the
too.
world of you, because when I think of a rippler, you're out there creating ripples every single day. Before we finish up, though, tell people about your book, because I want them to know where they can get it, and how they can learn more about the work that you're doing, so they can stay in contact, because you do so much. There's just so many good things that you're doing in the world. I think our audience definitely will want to tune in and become a part of it.
They can go to the website at drfroswa.com. My third book, which is a book of letters really to my daughter, it's lessons. When she's getting ready to go to college, I was terrified I hadn't taught her everything. And I wanted her to have this kind of guide that focuses on her faith. And so it's interesting. It was designed for young women, but people of all ages have read it and said, "Oh, there are lessons in there for me." The first book is, really our conversation today about rules of engagement. How do we make these connections that last? And it's
Hmm.
a workbook. I created it for women, but even Barry, who read it, Barry reads my stuff and will come back and go, He's going to tell you truth. And Barry is with both of them. He was like, those are really good.
Yeah.
They're profound. And the first one was really to help people think about the way that they build relationships. And so you can go to Amazon and get Rules of Engagement, Making Connections Last. My website has the book called Fly Away, which is the book of letters at drfroswa.com, or lessons rather, that are, in letters. But that's the way you can reach out. And then I'm on social media. I'm
Yep.
not hard to find with this name. So it is very easy to look me up and just follow and hang out with me.
Absolutely. Well, I promise you, if you do follow her and you hang out with her, you will be very grateful that you did, because you are a change maker, my friend. I'm just in love with the work that you do, and the world needs more people like you out there with that smile and that enthusiasm and that zest for life. We're just, I'm just so blessed to know you.
And the feeling is super duper mutual.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I am super. Oh, and before we go, how do people listen to your podcast? Because you have a phenomenal podcast.
Yeah. So the Tapestry, I'm just messing up today with not doing that self-promoting thing. That's what you should do. The Tapestry is a podcast where I listen to the stories of women. I, have been fortunate to bring on some people who, may have some notoriety, and most of them do not. But it's to know that despite the differences, our narratives weave this amazing fabric. And you learn lessons and you laugh and you cry. Some stories are very painful, but it's just to have people listen to how folks make it through obstacles and overcome. So, you can find that on Podbay or Podbean, and it's Pod something else. It's over everywhere. They've got it on Audible. It's on Google. It's on Apple. So it's just the Tapestry podcast.
Yeah.
But check us out. It's a joy to be able to hear these stories and elevate voices that we don't always get to hear.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it's a great podcast. I was fortunate enough to be a guest on your podcast a few months back.
One of two men. So you got to know that you are super special, because no disrespect, I love men. Yep. But I just made it as a show for women. So I love you when I said you had to be on there.
I love it. Yeah, and I enjoyed it. It was like, man, you were like on it too. You're just like, boom, let's go. Your producer lady she had it going on.
She doesn't play.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, I was impressed. I was very impressed. Well, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on to the Ripple Effect podcast. This has just been an absolute joy, and we will have to do it again.
Definitely. Right. You're going to come back to mine too.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, as always, thanks for tuning into the Ripple Effect podcast. I am so grateful. Be sure to check out Froswa online. She's amazing. You will definitely benefit from all of her great work that's out there. And until next time, my friends, Ripple on.